What's going on, everyone? So, Digital Foundry just did a recent analysis on Final Fantasy VII Remake on the Switch 2 and compared it now to the PlayStation 5. So now they're starting to see that that PS4 stuff was not true. As I was trying to tell people, no, man. People trying to compare a Steam Deck to it and all that. I'm like, no, it blows all those out of the water when it's docked. Trust me. NVIDIA DLSS is the best, and it shows. Consoles don't even have the most up-to-date FSR. It's always been behind. So you're using that FSR 2 or 3, yeah, you're gonna get smoked. Or 1 like on Monster Hunter. DLSS is just so much better. FSR only got closer recently. So yeah, this is where Nintendo gets to take another huge shortcut because they have the best upscaler in the world. So right here, reading this title, it says, and it's closer than you might think. This is what I've been trying to tell people. You're going to start to see these diminishing returns, and there's certain other developers that just don't optimize like they should. So, are we ready for this? Like, come subscribe. Let me know what y'all think. I got some other ones around the corner. Remember, this console's about to come out, so there's going to be a lot of comparisons. So we'll be able to have fun with that while doing other content and all that. So here we go, y'all.
Next news story, Nintendo continues to release its Creator Voices video, where essentially we get a bit more of a deep dive into some of the Switch 2 third-party games that are coming out. And this week we were blessed with a Final Fantasy VII Remake feature and more footage of Final Fantasy VII Remake on Switch 2, which is always welcome. We can add that to the stuff that we saw at the Nintendo Direct. And Oliver.
So you see what it's capable of doing already. What I'm trying to tell people is that, yeah, man, devs just been lazy, been taking shortcuts with AI upscalers. Like, this machine is definitely going to be capable. We're not trying to say whether it's more powerful than others or not. That's not the case here. It's just what it's capable of doing. What's the jump you're getting from Switch 1 to Switch 2? You know what I mean? And how much better NVIDIA DLSS is than FSR. Let's let's see if I even find something like it. DLSS is much better. Yep, see, people are already saying that. That makes sense.
At the risk of upsetting the internet again, you've done you've done a comparison between the footage that we saw in this creator's voice video and the PlayStation 5 version running in performance mode. I've had a look at this head to head. I've got to say, this Switch 2 version actually looks really, really good in terms of the visual feature set. But tell me more about your thoughts there.
Yes, so a couple days ago, Nintendo released a 3-minute video of Naoki Hamaguchi, who I believe is the game director for the Final Fantasy VII Remake series, talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake on Nintendo Switch 2, and it had about 1.5 minutes of remake footage, again, presumably taken from Switch 2, although we'll touch on that in a moment. And I was able to match about 1 minute of it or so on PS5 because a lot of it was taken from the early game there. The last time we talked about Final Fantasy VII Remake on Switch 2, some punters in the peanut gallery pointed out that maybe I should have compared the game on Switch 2 to PS5 because it is the integrated version, has the integrated lighting changes. So I thought that was, a fair point. And maybe this time I would take a look at the integrated version instead of PS4. So I did PS5 in performance mode. That seemed fairest to me because, native 4K with the quality mode seemed a bit extreme for these comparisons. So that's important to note. But of course, the Switch 2 is targeting 30 FPS here, not 60 FPS, as is the case on PlayStation 5. So if we look at the first set of shots here, the primary difference, and this will be a repeated point, is that the Switch 2 is blurrier than the PS5.
Yeah, you can kind of see that right here a little bit. It's not like crazy. And then, of course, we know the differences are going to be CPU limits on the Switch compared to other consoles. That's just a given, but it's a hybrid mobile device. It's not really a standard console, so it's still impressive for what it's able to do. That's one thing to be noted. Of course, it won't be keeping up with the frames of other consoles.
There's a difference in image clarity, so it's harder to make out fine texture details. In terms of the metrics, I counted out a few shots on Switch 2, and it renders at 1080p, it looks like quite consistently with no particular signs of upsampling nor any particular signs of like DLSS or anything like that. I think this just looks like their regular TAA. The PS5 obviously is at 1512p with TAA, and it looks a lot sharper in these stills. But of course, one thing you have to consider here is the Switch 2 footage is coming from a YouTube rip. Unfortunately, they did not supply a high quality press asset, so maybe it fares a little bit better if we actually had those high quality assets, although
That makes sense. Definitely when it comes to YouTube and stuff like that, decompression is definitely something they do a lot. So I know what he means. So yeah, we could have a better version at launch and have a patch going too to have it more optimized. They could add in DLSS. You never know. Interesting. Okay.
I am looking mostly at very
Well,
stationary
this is just
shots, so it
running on
shouldn't
raw
be
stats.
too bad there. Another issue is that the hair is heavily dithered in both versions, and is basically relying on the TA to clean it up and make it look presentable over time. On PS5, it looks pretty okay. And at 4K on PS5, it looks very clean, I think, actually quite clean. But on Switch, it's rougher here and not as elegant. And it looks okay, but it's a little bit more messy, more like base PS4 there. The depth of field is also shallower in these cutscene shots on Switch, which is maybe a side effect of the resolution difference. Sometimes that scales based on resolution. And as we go through the shots, that's basically the story. Differences in depth of field and in the hair rendering, quality of hair rendering, and then less clarity on Switch 2. But not altogether a bad looking result. It looks pretty good. This last shot has a bit more of a meaningful difference. The shot of the tower there, the Mako Tower, insofar as the smoke is a bit more prominent on Switch, but again, just a little quirk. I don't think it means anything.
No, it doesn't, because most people who never had this experience are going to be feeling happy when they get to play the game. They're going to want to get in there and get that experience. When it came out on PlayStation 4, it was 30 frames. You know what I mean? Everybody beat it. It was no problem. Like when it comes to stuff like this, it's fine. The game is going to run fine. I'm pretty sure they'll probably end up adding a fidelity mode or something over time. No, not that, because they don't have VRR and dock till they add it as a software implementation. But they'll probably come up with something, later down the line. I'm pretty sure they can optimize it even more. Because he said there's no DLSS. That's crazy. So they could get more frames out of it.
There's also a bit of pre-rendered video that they showed off here, which is not too surprising. It looks very, very similar on both platforms, so chalk that up as a big win for Switch. No, but it's no. 1080p 30 video, it looks like on both platforms, so nothing exceptional there.
Yeah.
But there is one last shot that I do think we need to talk about that is exceptional relative to these other shots, and that's that classic opening shot of Final Fantasy VII Remake, where the camera pans from Barrett to Cloud, and he jumps off the train and kind of stands up and sheaths his sword behind him. Very iconic shot, very important
cool
shot.
Guy.
Maybe the key shot of that game, right? Very cool shot.
Yeah.
That's running at 60 FPS for some reason in this footage. So I saw a lot of people online, and even Alex initially say it looks like they got a 60 FPS mode. And this immediately piqued my curiosity. So I had to download this trailer and see what was going on. And it became pretty evident that this is not Switch 2. Because if we pause right at the end of that shot and look at Cloud's hair in the still frame, it's much cleaner on the alleged Switch 2 than PS5 in performance mode.
Yeah.
Well, it's targeting the same 60 FPS. So that doesn't make much sense to me. I strongly suspect that's not Switch 2. In real time, it's not. It's probably PC footage, is my guess, based on how it looks. It's probably high resolution PC footage. I don't think that's Switch 2. And I don't think there is I think this game is probably just going to have a 30 FPS mode, maybe a 40 FPS mode. I don't think it's going to have a 60 FPS mode. I don't think it will, just because the graphics would be downgraded to a degree that I don't think that Square Enix would want to ship that. But overall, I think this is a really good showing. It's a last-gen game running with some upgrades on PS5, not gigantic upgrades, but some upgrades to lighting, some stylistic and changes to the volumetrics and things like that are quite nice. And it's running at 1080p 30, which is, not that great relative to PS5 at 1512p 60, not that you would expect it to be, but it's pretty solid relative to PS4, which was also 1080p 30. Again, just preliminary, we have to see the whole game, of course, but this is, so far, looks pretty decent. Another decent showing for Switch 2 with kind of in that mix with PS4, but also showing, some favorable aspects here in regards to that lighting presentation.
Well, that's the thing. I think we need to get past this PS4 aspect now that we've seen that it goes up to 3 teraflops and that it has 1536 CUDA cores, a way better CPU than the PS4, way more RAM than the PS4. I mean, it had 8 gigabytes of outdated RAM. You know what I mean? Well, like DDR4. Switch has DDR5, and it has 4 gigabytes more of RAM. It has a much better GPU too. It has DLSS, it has tensor cores. It's more like it's trying to jump towards the Series S, and with DLSS, it's able to make shortcuts. And when it comes to the GPU and the RAM, the Switch is fine against any other of those that I mentioned in that ballpark. It's just when it comes to the CPU, that's where the Series S has a big advantage. And that's not too bad considering it's a hybrid. It can go on the go. So honestly, I'm very happy with seeing these results. I told people, like I've told other people, I'm not getting the Switch 2 for third-party games. I have my PC for that, or my console, or my PS5 if that was the case, and it was only on there. I'm getting it for first party, and this tells me what it's capable of doing and what first party games can go to. That's what I care about. So I have a different take on this probably than other people because I don't buy Nintendo for third party. I buy them for first party. So I just want to see what the machine is capable of with upselling, and I'm very happy with what I see.
As an aside, I did scrounge up a little bit of capture from PS4 as well. And in this shot in the bar, you can see that the Seventh Heaven blackboard is substantially lower resolution on PS4.
What's I'm saying, like the PS4 is not gonna be able to keep up with the Switch overall. It's a much better console. Like it's definitely more powerful than it easily. In handheld mode, the Switch can compete with PS4. That's what I'm saying. Like docked, no way, because the PlayStation 4 topped at 1.8 teraflops. Switch is at 1,200 more teraflops docked. It's closer to the PS4 Pro in power. But CPU and RAM, it beats the PS4 Pro because it's using the same RAM and CPU as the base. That's what I was trying to tell people that honestly, it's like in between, like trying to get closer to the Series S. Just can't match it on CPU.
So it does look like, at least in some areas, we are seeing some of that high resolution art from Intergrade. But to see if that carries across the entire game and all of its texture assets, all of its upgraded texture assets, we'll have to wait for the final game to see. The only caveat is that this is running with poor frame pacing. That was also the case with the earlier showing, which put through our tools. And it was also the case with Crisis Core.
But it's just like Nintendo was saying. This is why these are all early graphics comparisons, because the final day one patch for the system is available at launch, and all these games are going to get day one patches. So they're only going to run better. What we're seeing is what's available on an early build before the console even launched. Still impressive.
Reunion a few years back, which was also an Unreal-based game.
Depends on how you want to look at it.
So they really need to use a different FPS capping method than the one that's built into Unreal, which was presumably the one they're using. Please, this really needs to be fixed. I'm going to be really upset if this isn't fixed.
I agree.
But now the one caveat here, of course, is that on a G-Sync panel in portable mode, this should be fine, right? Hopefully.
Should be fine.
Should be fine, hopefully. But in dock play, potentially without VRR there, not fine, right? Probably not fine. So that's the only caveat here. Performance needs to be fixed. Visuals, though, I think looks great. This is presumably all docked footage, of course. Portable mode, maybe we're getting a cut down to, 720p, 648p, something in that range. But I imagine on that screen, scaled up, it'll probably still look pretty good as well. And that would be, an experience that's probably broadly comparable to what you get on like a Steam Deck at 30 FPS. That would probably be a pretty good experience there in portable mode potentially. So yeah, I'm pretty satisfied by this overall, and I think it's a good showing for Switch 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I've got your feeds here. I've actually just synchronized them on Premiere Timeline, and I think overall it looks fantastic. If you've got the feature set by and large of the PlayStation 5 performance mode running at 1080p 30 on a resource-constrained device like the Switch 2, I think that's a major win. I also understand from that video that it looks like they're intent on bringing the whole remake trilogy to Switch 2, right, Oliver?
Yeah, because it has a lot of selling power. I've been trying to tell people this. Like, Square already said they're getting Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. That's going to be more graphically demanding than the other two. If the Switch is able to run that, it tells you a lot. You said it right here. Entire Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy coming to Nintendo Switch 2, Square Enix developer reveals. I've seen people say dumb stuff like, oh, it's because Rebirth didn't want to get held back by the Series S. That's why it's not coming. I'm like, no, dude, it's a deal with Sony. Sony signed a deal. But Square sees the market potential of Nintendo in Japan and over here worldwide. They're like, no, we can't do that this time. We're going to even put stuff on Xbox. Obviously, Nintendo is a priority over Xbox. Duh, their base is way bigger. They're the number one gaming company in the world. Everybody buys on their platforms. You know what I mean? So Square needs that profit that they lost trying to make deals with Sony. So they look at Nintendo next, and then Microsoft after that. That makes sense. But for those of you that were thinking Final Fantasy VII is not coming to Xbox, it is. It's just that there's more priorities when you have a base in Japan and you're a worldwide brand. So you're still going to get it. Just be patient. All right, y'all, let me know what y'all think about this. Like I was telling people before, this machine is very capable. It depends on the developers. But what's going to be its problem in third party is CPU limits. So they're going to have to find different ways around that. But other than that, I'm very happy with what I see. I can't wait to see what's going to happen with the first party reveals. There's going to be so much. Remember, they drop like 7-8 games a year. So we're talking about years and years of amazing first party games coming. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. Let me know what y'all think. All right, y'all. Peace. Have a great day. Stay being a true gamer. Support everything. Peace, y'all. Unless it's trash.